Welcome back to the Marketing Moment with DB Dynamo. I'm your host and my co-host, Julia Reynolds. Julia, tell them hello, or in any form that you'd like to.
Hi, everyone.
I know I always provide a lot of bombast for that and really set the stakes high for you to give like a great introduction, and that's really not fair because I never tell you exactly how to say it. Nevertheless, we're glad to be back for another week. And for those of you who are first-time listeners or those of you coming back, just to restate who we are, DB Dynamo, we are an e-commerce agency that sells products for the body. So if your customers eat it or wear it, we help you sell it. And our podcast here, if you're listening or if you're watching it on YouTube, is predicated on some simple things. We obviously talk about e-com for the body, but generally speaking, we're trying to deliver quick, concise insights that you can take away with you and use in your business, whether you're an agency, worker like us, or if you're a brand, or somewhere in between those two, or you just want to learn a little bit more. Really, anybody who cares will be able to take these actionable tips with them from our episodes and implement them as soon as today in their businesses or in their studies. So without further ado, this week's episode is one that we're excited to share because, again, we talk about things that actually drive revenue for businesses. That's what e-commerce is predicated on, and frankly, all businesses. But today we're talking about 3 tips for content creation that converts. And we'll give a little bit of credit. We'll drop this link on our website. There's an article from the Content Marketing Institute that we used some sourcing from, and you guys can get some more tips from them just in general. But we have 3, like I said, 3 tips, and I'll tell you what they are before we dive in. 1 is add urgency, 2 is reduce anxiety, and 3 is eliminate distractions. And we'll talk about each of those in a little bit more detail about how you can apply them. Now, I'll preface today's episode by saying these 3 tips for creating content that converts are not magic beans. You need a brand promise that you can deliver on consistently. But if you're doing that and you're looking to make your content work harder, you're going to love what we have to share with you today. So, and as is our promise, like I said, these are actionable tips you can take with you to use today. So, Julia, it's up to you. We can freestyle this. Do you want to take number 1, or I can take number 1? We're doing this in real time.
You kick it off with number 1.
All right, I'll kick it off with number 1. So, as I mentioned in the build-up, this one is add urgency. We know people are seeing hundreds of ads a day, or rather, actually, they were. Now it's rumored to be in the thousands. I'll talk about that more in a second. And that's also true whether they know it or not. From an article by Spaceback from 2020, this is, again, just a year ago, Google DoubleClick reported a 0.05 click-through rate for display ads, which sounds maybe commonplace or worse than you would have expected if you've been living in this industry, the past couple of years. But what might surprise you is it's actually a massive decline from when these ads were first introduced back in 1997, which is insane to think that was, 24 years ago. But back then, those ads were earning a 12% click-through rate. Why? Because they were new, they were novel, and they had something to say because there was less competition for the voice as well. So the ads people are seeing, they're obviously tuning out, at least when it refers to Google Display Network, which means you have to try even harder to get them to not only notice you, but do something about it. I think I've mentioned this on a couple episodes. I'm an adjunct professor at the University of Miami and had been a little bit at FIU. That's actually how I met Julia. And one of the things that they were floored by is this statistic that I shared actually just a couple of weeks ago. That in the 1970s, the average person was already being exposed to upward of 500 ads per day. But today, that estimate, it's upwards of 10,000 or more on a daily basis. And to the point before, most people don't even realize that they're being exposed to most of them. For example, I was listening to Spotify, not podcasts. I was just listening to music this morning. But I am a perfect example of somebody who's being advertised to on that channel without even realizing it's happening. And sometimes I'm cognizant of that. Other times I'm not. Another example is when you're driving down the same expressway to get to work every day, and there's that billboard on the side of the highway, and you pass it, 10 or 15 days without ever even noticing that it's there. So we are just so inclined to having a messaging inundation that we just aren't even aware of. So what does that mean? Essentially, it means that we have to find something to get people to see us through the noise. And urgency in our copy is one of those ways that we can do that. Now, it's not just urgency for our urgency saying, oh, do this because we need to make money or whatever. It's urgency that values what it is that the client is looking to get, or in the case of retail or e-com, your customer. So here's a couple quick examples, again, actionable that you can take with you. Making your content articulate that an offer, for example, is limited time only, but be specific. use phrases like before it closes, or even more specifically, only available until Friday at 5 p.m. When you talk about, a sale that's, 15, 20% off or whatever, you're basically adding just to the noise of what they're already seeing. Anybody who goes on a website now trying to buy clothing or skincare or whatever knows that they're going to, if they just get ready to leave the website, that banner is going to pop up and it's going to offer them 15% or 10%, depending on who the brand is, if they just give their email address. And because of that, it's almost guaranteed that a customer is going to expect that at a bare minimum. So whatever your retail price is, you can assume that they're expecting 10 to 15% off that anyway. So you have to find a way to add some degree of urgency in your copy that sort of trumps all those things. And I'm not saying remove the value proposition that you have through email. It's obviously real value in collecting that information. But if you do have a limited time sale, make it specifically clear how long that's available. And specificity is a great one because people all of a sudden have an anchor in their mind that they know this is when it expires. And we did a lot of marketing for food festivals in recent years. Obviously, some of those have gone away or on hiatus during the COVID times. But that was another great one. There was, for example, a certain limited number of VIP tickets you could only get, if you bought them by a certain date. So urgency is a huge one. Number two, I guess I sort of just gave this one away. Have the offer limited to the first X number of customers by saying free for the first 100 customers. This can be used for sales, but it's also for early access to special content or experiences. The sneaker industry has done a masterful job at this on both ends. One of the things we're not really going to talk about today, but that they've done really well, is that they build anticipation up front by telling you what the release date is in advance. And then they also give you a limited run of how many that you can get over a certain period of time. That degree of anticipation mixed with urgency is a tried and true mixology. I'm trying to think of an explanation here that works very effectively at getting people to act. And the example I gave with the food festival, they would preemptively try to drive sales of VIP tickets, their most expensive tickets, in the early going, because having cash on hand is valuable to a business. Well, how do you do that while giving value to your customers? Offer a great incentive to acquire a high value ticket item or item to your business, whatever, if it's not tickets, and then make sure that it's got an end date. So if you don't act early, boom, the price goes away or the limited supply goes away and you can't get it anymore unless you act urgently. It also goes to the point to emphasize you have to be truthful and honest to your customers, because if they know that this is the best sale and then 2 months later the best sale comes out again, now you've lost your credibility. Credibility is really important to these. And then the third, before I hand it over to Julia to talk about reducing anxiety, is adding in temporal urgency. This one is perhaps a little bit more common and not necessarily as urgent, but still incredibly useful because it plays on the need for something presently. So doing this today or starting today, it's a common and effective approach that you see a lot at the start of the new year for health and wellness brands, but it's also really good to be used in another way about showing the upside to acting sooner, such as life insurance products, or knowing that, such a deal like this won't be available if you don't act now. So temporal urgency is another. Those three are great ways to add urgency and to capitalize on getting cash in your pocket as a business, but also adding value to your customers. So Julie is going to tell you about reducing anxiety. And no, this is not a therapy episode.
No, it's not. But speaking candidly about the past year, I'm sure many people are anxious. I'm pretty sure I read an article sometime that said like 70% of people qualify for a generalized anxiety disorder, which is like a massive amount compared to pre-pandemic.
It's a lot.
Yeah. And so you want to make sure that you are confirming with your customer, confirming with your client that the choices that they're making are safe ones. They don't want to have to go beyond their, daily life, I guess, to try and make sure that you're a honest company, that your products are true to what you say they are, that they really work. You have to build that trust so they don't have to go and search it out. And so there's a few ways that you can build trust using both the copy and your visuals. And so the first thing is to add people. People want to trust other people. If you are a pharmaceutical company and you have your founder or even someone who's sort of acting as a spokesperson, maybe doesn't have any sort of, leeway with or any sort of pressure at the company, but you have a recognizable person, a celebrity even, that people can attribute to your ads, and then they can trust. And so there's a reason that these pharmaceutical commercials aren't just pills like rolling on the table and saying,
Right.
oh, this works, right? And it's not just animated graphics, it's people walking in a park, or they're smiling, or they're spending time with their grandchildren. I'm thinking specifically of that COPD commercial with like the old man and the like blow the house down, the wolf commercial. I don't know if you've seen it.
Oh man, probably, but I think I've been trained to ignore it.
Probably,
Yeah.
probably. But, things like that where they show you what you're missing out on, that type of human interaction definitely reduces the anxiety that, like, okay, I can trust this. There's real people that do this, you know. So the second thing is to tell a story, because sure, you have your like 30 seconds, or you have, even less than that. And you have to explain, like, here's our brand, here's where we came from. We didn't just appear overnight. We're not some sort of drop shipping company.
Right.
You want to tell the narrative of your company. Why did you found this? Like, what's the point?
Yeah, I mean, at the start of the episode, to Julia's point, we're echoing the same thing. We do tell ourselves and each of you that we're an e-commerce agency for the body. But yeah, if I'm honest with myself too, I know that there are others who are qualified to do this work too. It is a crowded space with people who are good at it. But that may not be compelling, and what I'm about to tell you may not be compelling either. But our story is that this is a founder-led business. I'm the founder, and I started this business at my kitchen table in my one-bedroom apartment on Miami Beach alone with no money in the bank. And we care enough about our people that no one has ever chosen to leave this team in 5.5 years. And we bring that energy to our clients. That story, I think, is more compelling than saying we're an e-com business for the brain or the body. And though it's a little longer, so I may not tell it at the start of every podcast, but again, I think what Julia is getting at is reducing anxiety and being real and showing people is showing your relatability. And I imagine that maybe not for everybody, but that little anecdote is probably a better way of getting someone to trust and at least understand me before they trust me, perhaps. Before just saying, hey, we offer this service that might sort of seem commoditized to you, and being able to bridge that gap by being real and is a great way to reduce anxiety. And it bridges that gap between the customer being aware of you and you wanting to sell the product. It brings you guys closer together sooner, and stories sell, and founder stories are generally ones that tend to be compelling. But if your founder story is not necessarily part of your business, that doesn't mean you can't tell stories about the customers whose lives have been transformed or improved or whatever by the products that you're selling. And then number 3, Julia, you want to take this one, and I'll take the second bullet.
Sure. All right. So the third thing is to eliminate distractions. So Apple created Do Not Disturb for a reason. I'm sure if you have an iPhone, you've used it at one point. We all
Certainly.
get hundreds of notifications a day, hundreds of them. If you have an iPhone, you can actually check under settings, under screen time. And if you look at see all activity, you can see how many times you picked up your phone for a notification and what the notification was.
Yep.
So this doesn't even count the notifications you get while you're on your phone that just do the little drop down banner or a phone call or whatever. So combining that with banner blindness that we mentioned earlier, you have to have an ad that grabs people's attention, because people are just prone to ignoring things, ignoring notifications, ignoring ads, ignoring it. And so while you're probably not speaking to a child, because that's probably not the person who's supposed to be reading your ad, you want to simplify your call to action or your goals or whatever your copy is as if you were. And you don't want to infantilize your customer, of course, but you're not giving multiple directions. I don't want a 15-step process to get my 20% off coupon code. I need quick, what do I need to do? What information do you need? I don't want to do a sign up, a survey. I don't want to have to share this all at once. You got to keep it clear and easy.
Yeah, it's a great point. And David Ogilvy, who's a lot of people call the godfather of advertising, famously once said, the customer is not a moron, she's your wife. And that was a great anecdote, which probably would not be allowed. I guess I just said it, but you probably wouldn't get away with saying it today. But the anecdote essentially implies make it simple for your customers without infantilizing them. I think is a great word that you use, Julia. Like, talk to them like they're real people, but make it simple enough for it to be easy to digest in that regard. Because as we talked about, 10,000 plus, ads a day, even if it was only a fraction of that, is still a lot of noise. And then the other part about eliminating distractions, and the only reason I mentioned a second bullet is because I added this one into the episode notes, was, advertisers on this side care about CTA buttons, for example, right? You'll see a lot of people, have, knockdown drag out fights over, oh, should it be learn more, or should it be, subscribe now, or should it be buy now, or whatever. The reality is the customer doesn't care. No one needs this. No one decides to learn more because the button says so. They learn more because they believe in the content and they want to learn more. So give them what they need to know concisely, and that's it. So in summary, an episode of great value, we hope. The three tips for content that three tips for creating content that converts. Number one was add urgency. Number two, reduce anxiety. That's talking about putting people and faces and stories to bridge that divide. And number three, eliminate distractions. Don't overcomplicate things. Your customers don't care. If you do, then you're focusing on the wrong things. That's what we have for you today. Hope this was useful and actionable for you. And we will be back next week, of course, with a new episode. Every Tuesday they drop on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, and if you want to watch our faces on YouTube, you can do that as well. And share it with your peers. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you next week.